The moment that little girl tugged at my coat and whispered, "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night," something inside my chest twisted so violently I couldn't breathe. I was standing outside my own corporate building, me, a CEO, who spent his life solving impossible problems, and yet I froze like a terrified child. Her voice was shaking, her gloves soaked with melting snow, and she kept blinking like she was fighting back tears. And when she looked up at me with those huge scared eyes and asked if I could help her find her mom, everything in my world shifted, like the ground tilted under my feet. And here's where I need you to tell me honestly. Would you have followed a stranger's child into a freezing storm on nothing but blind instinct? Or would you have walked away thinking it wasn't your business? Because what I found that night changed me forever, maybe more than I wanted. I should probably start at the beginning, though, or at least as close to the beginning as I can. Because the truth is, I didn't know this girl, not really. But I knew her mother, not well, not personally, just as someone who worked in my building. Her name was Mara. She was quiet, polite, kept to herself, always early, never caused problems. The kind of employee who disappeared into the background so easily that sometimes I felt guilty for not knowing more about her. A few weeks before this night, I had actually noticed her looking exhausted, pale, distracted, like she was carrying 3 mountains on her back. But she brushed it off when I asked, saying it was just life. I wish I had pushed harder. I wish I hadn't accepted that answer so easily. Because maybe then what happened wouldn't have happened. Maybe then I wouldn't be telling you. This story at all. The night everything happened was brutal. Snowstorms aren't rare where I live, but this one felt personal. The wind was vicious, whipping around corners, cutting straight through winter coats like they were paper. I only stepped outside the building because I needed air after a long meeting. I remember thinking no one sane should have been out there, which is why seeing a tiny figure not far from our entrance shook me immediately. At first I thought she was just lost. Then she approached me, gently tugging my sleeve, and her voice, God, that voice was trembling so hard I almost didn't understand her at first. "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night." And she kept staring at the entrance like she expected her mother to magically walk out any second. She told me her mom worked here. Told me she waited and waited and waited and no one came out except strangers. And then, because her home had no heat and her babysitter left before the storm got bad, she came looking. On foot, in the dark, in the snow. Alone. I wanted to believe there had been some misunderstanding. I told myself maybe her mom picked up a night shift. Maybe she was working late somewhere else. But something felt wrong, deeply, sickeningly wrong. So I asked the girl her name. Lena. Asked her mom's name. Mara. And my stomach dropped because I knew exactly who she meant, and I also knew I hadn't seen Mara since early afternoon. I tried calling her. Straight to voicemail. I checked the building logs. She never clocked out. That was the moment the cold really hit me, not the snowstorm cold, but the kind that wraps around your bones when you sense something is horribly, irreversibly wrong. I asked Lena when she'd last seen her mom. She said yesterday morning, before school, when her mom promised she'd be home early to make soup because they were both sick. And then Lena said something else so simple, so innocent, yet so devastating that I swear it broke something inside me. She whispered, maybe. She forgot me because she's too tired. No child should ever have to think that. Ever. So I took her inside the building to warm up. I made her hot chocolate from the office machine. She held the cup with both hands like it was the only source of warmth left in the world. I contacted security, HR, anyone I could think of, but no one had answers. No one had seen Mara since around 5 p.m. the previous day, which made no sense. She always left early because of her daughter. And then something clicked in my mind. the storage area behind the building. It wasn't a place employees usually went, but the storm had knocked out some lights the night before and maintenance was doing repairs. I didn't know why it came to mind, but once it did, the dread was so strong that I couldn't ignore it. I told Lena gently that I needed her to show me where she last waited for her mom, and she insisted on coming with me. She wouldn't leave my side. So we stepped back out into that brutal storm together. Asterisk, I'm not exaggerating when I say the wind nearly knocked her over. I picked her up and wrapped my coat around her. She kept pointing toward the back alley where the deliveries came in. She always comes this way when she's late, she said. She doesn't want to scare the neighbors. And with every step, something inside me kept whispering that I was already too late. When we reached the alley, it was darker than I expected. Snowdrifts were piled high against the walls. Footprints half covered by fresh snowfall caught my eye, but I couldn't tell how old they were. Then Lena pointed at a set of emergency doors. That's where she comes out, she said, but the doors were shut tight, iced over. No forced entry marks, no clues. And then Lena whispered, "Sir, look." She was pointing at something half buried under a pile of snow against the wall. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it. Asterisk. It was a glove. A woman's glove. Purple. Wool. I had seen Mara wearing it before. Asterisk, my breath hitched. My hand shook. I dug around the snow, terrified of what I might find. But it was just the glove. Nothing else. Lena started crying softly, barely making a sound. She whispered again, "Did something happen to her?" And I wanted to tell her no. I wanted to lie. I wanted to give her comfort. But I couldn't form the words because I didn't know the truth yet. I scooped her up, told her we had to keep looking, that her mom was strong, that she wouldn't leave her alone. We followed the faint trail of disturbed snow leading toward the old maintenance shed behind the building, a place barely used anymore, except sometimes during bad weather. Halfway there, Lena suddenly grabbed my coat collar and said, "Wait, I heard something." I stopped. The wind was roaring, but beneath it, there was a sound, a faint, muffled thump. My pulse skyrocketed. Asterisk, before I continue, I need to ask you something. If you were in my place holding a terrified child, facing a dark shed in the middle of a storm, knowing something awful might be inside, what would you do? Would you rush in without thinking? Call police first? Turn around and pretend you never heard the noise? I genuinely want you to pause and tell me in the comments what you would have done. Because what I did next, I still don't know if it was brave or reckless. Asterisk, I kicked the shed door open so hard it slammed against the wall. The sound inside stopped immediately. At first, all I saw was darkness. The air smelled cold, metallic, wrong. I told Lena to stay behind me. I used my phone flashlight to scan the room. Tools, boxes, shelving, nothing. And then my light hit a shape on the floor. A person, curled, motionless, covered in frost. I rushed over, heart pounding in my throat. It was Mara, her skin pale, lips trembling, barely conscious, hands bruised, hair tangled, jacket ripped. She looked like she had been fighting someone or something for her life. I checked her pulse, weak, but there. She opened one eye just enough to whisper, "Lena." I told her Lena was safe. I told her I had her daughter. And she started crying silently, the kind of crying that comes from pure relief and terror. At the same time, asterisk, but then something happened I didn't expect. She grabbed my shirt with surprising strength and whispered, "He's coming back." Those 3 words froze my blood. I asked who. She said she didn't know his name. Just that. He followed her after she left work. That he kept asking if she needed help, that he kept getting closer. She tried to lose him but slipped on the ice near the alley. He dragged her into the shed, hit her, locked her in, and said he'd come back later. My hands clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. Rage hot, violent, consuming flooded my entire body. I helped Mara sit up. Lena rushed in crying and wrapped herself around her mother. And I realized something horrifying. The footprints we saw outside were fresh. Too fresh. He hadn't come back yet, but he was close. Asterisk, I called emergency services immediately, then security. I positioned myself between the door and the mother and child. Minutes felt like hours. The storm howled. Every crunch of snow outside made my muscles tense so hard they hurt. And then just as the sirens in the distance became faintly audible, I heard footsteps approaching the shed. Slow, deliberate. I stepped completely in front of the door. The handle twisted, hard. Someone tried to yank it open. I held my ground. The person pushed again, harder this time, as if they expected the door to swing inward. When it didn't, they hesitated. And for one horrifying second, I saw a shadow. Through the cracked broad shoulders, a hood, uncertain movement. Then the shadow turned and ran as the sirens grew louder. Police arrived seconds later. They rushed the area, searching for footprints, evidence, anything. But the storm was already covering tracks, erasing clues. The paramedics took Mara and Lena inside the ambulance. I insisted on riding with them. Lena clung to my hand so tightly. My fingers went numb. Asterisk at the hospital, it took hours for everything to settle. Mara had hypothermia, bruised ribs, a concussion, and severe exhaustion, but she survived. Lena refused to sleep until a nurse promised her they wouldn't let her mom out of their sight. I stayed with them until dawn. I didn't want to leave. I couldn't. I felt responsible not just for what happened, but for not noticing earlier signs. Later, when Mara finally woke properly, she told me more. She had been being followed for weeks. She hadn't told anyone because she didn't want to seem paranoid. She didn't want to lose her job. She didn't want to seem weak. She never imagined it would escalate. She kept apologizing, saying she didn't mean to cause trouble. And I told her something I wish every struggling person could hear. Your safety is not trouble. Your life is not trouble. You are not a burden, she cried harder. Asterisk, police never caught the man. Too little evidence, too much storm cover. But they increased patrols. And I made a decision that changed everything. I gave Mara paid leave for as long as she needed. I arranged therapy support. I installed better security on all employee exits. I organized escorts for anyone working late. I didn't want another parent, another child to go through something like this ever again. Weeks passed. Mara healed slowly. Lena began smiling again. I visited when I could, sometimes bringing toys or groceries. I didn't mean to get attached. But something about that night bound us together in a way I can't quite explain. Maybe because when everything fell apart, we only had each other. Asterisk, I never expected what happened next, though. One evening, weeks after the incident, I visited them again. Lena greeted me with the biggest hug I'd ever received. Mara looked healthier, warmer, more present. She really smiled for the first time since everything happened. She said, "I don't know how to thank you." I told her she didn't need to. All I did was what any human should do. But deep down, I wondered if that was true. Because I kept imagining what would have happened if I had ignored her daughter, if I had gone home early, if I had let fear stop me. I don't think I'll ever forget the look in Mara's eyes when she said, "You saved my life." Or the way Lena whispered, "Thank you for bringing my mom back." Asterisk. Now here's the part I still think about late at night. After everything, I often wonder if this was fate or coincidence. If I was meant to be outside at that exact moment. If that little girl was meant to find me and no one else. Or if I was simply the nearest adult she trusted, whatever the truth is, I'm grateful I was there. Because that night changed me. It made me remember that behind every employee, every stranger, every tired face in a hallway, there is a life, a family, a story I know nothing about. And sometimes those stories are hanging by a thread, held together only by hope and fear and sheer will. Asterisk. So that's my story. And now I want to end it by asking you something. If you were on my side, if you think I made the right choice following that little girl into the snow, please like this video. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, and share your final thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.